Yo, what's going on? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. There's a lot of negative perception surrounding the Minnesota Vikings going into the 2023 NFL season. And in my opinion, the main source of criticism is this defense and more specifically the secondary. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at and breaking down the most vital part of this secondary, Byron Murphy Jr., their new signing from the Arizona Cardinals, in order to determine can Byron Murphy step up for the Minnesota Vikings in 2023. So Byron Murphy was a second-round pick, more specifically the 33rd pick in the 2019 NFL Draft out of Washington. He was a very productive player at Washington. As per NFL.com, he was the number one rated corner in the 2019 NFL Draft class in terms of the productivity he had in college. And he burst onto the scene right away in his rookie year, and he was very productive, starting all 16 games as their number 2 corner, and he had 78 tackles and 1 interception. His breakout year was in 2021, as in 2021, not only were the Cardinals very good, being the last undefeated team to remain, but he was the third best player on that entire defense, being very productive. He had 4 interceptions, and he even had 1 touchdown. Last year was, of course, a bit of a down year for Byron Murphy and the entire Arizona Cardinals team, as Byron Murphy ended up getting injured, and he only played in 9 games, but in those 9 games, he was still pretty productive. He had a solid PFF grade, and he did have 2 fumble recoveries and 1 touchdown. Considering the Minnesota Vikings are extremely thin in terms of cornerback depth, and they were losing Patrick Peterson to free agency, they ended up giving Byron Murphy a 2-year, $22 million contract. And I'll be honest, guys, I think the fit between Byron Murphy and the new Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, is an absolute match made in heaven. Not only does Byron Murphy have the exact right skill set to play in Brian Flores' scheme, but Brian Flores' scheme really highlights what Byron Murphy does well as a corner. Brian Flores brings along this very aggressive, turnover-oriented, no risk it, no biscuit, Brian Flores 3-4 Belichick-esque scheme. Of course, he had a significant amount of experience with Bill Belichick from the years 2008 to 2018, and this defense is extremely multiple with a lot of inverse coverage looks. He will use Byron Murphy not only in the slot, but he'll also use him as an outside corner and outright shadow the best wide receiver, because this Vikings team straight up does not have any other proven corners. Not only that, but Byron Murphy is very flexible. He can play at any position in the field in terms of the secondary. He even is aggressive enough, and he plays downhill enough with the right zone and man instincts in order to even play box safety and overall free or strong safety at any point in the season. Byron Murphy has above average physical tools and that aggressive mindset necessary to be a very good run stopper in this Brian Flores aggressive scheme. Not only that, but Brian Flores does like press man coverage, and that's something Byron Murphy has excelled at his entire career. Byron Murphy, in my opinion, is one of the better blitzing cornerbacks in the league, and considering this Vikings team does not have a lot of good personnel in the front 7, they're going to need to manufacture pressure. That's something that Brian Flores does very well, and that is going to highlight another skill of Byron Murphy, as he's a very underrated blitzer. I think Byron Murphy will have a couple sacks as a cornerback this season. And Byron Murphy straight up just has a nose for the football. He's a guy who likes finding the end zone. Not only that, but he's very aggressive in his turnovers. He has a very good ball skill and a very good profile as a sneaky good ball winner on the outside as a cornerback. He's a guy with a significant amount of experience as a wide receiver, as he was an All-American wide receiver in high school. He put up 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns as a receiver. Considering Byron Murphy is going to be the number 1 cornerback on a very man-heavy, very aggressive scheme, he's going to need very good IQ and instincts in order to cover the best wide receivers on the opposing team week in and week out. Not only that, of course, he needs the physical skill set, and Byron Murphy is a guy, in terms of the size, he's a solid size profile guy. He's about 5'11" with a solid amount of weight to him. Not only that, but more importantly, he does have solid play strength, and he has enough speed to keep up with the best wide receivers in the NFL. There's already been a significant amount of tape to come out during Vikings training camp of him guarding Justin Jefferson, and he's actually had a lot of very solid reps against Justin Jefferson. Not only that, but in his time with Arizona, week in and week out in practice, he was practicing against DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL during his time with the Cardinals. So the fact that Byron Murphy comes into the NFL and he's been guarding a top 5 receiver in practice week in and week out, and considering how much of a wizard and savant that Brian Flores is, specifically with cornerbacks and the secondary, I think this sets up for Byron Murphy to have a phenomenal season with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I don't know how good their secondary will be as a whole, as there's a lot of question marks with that cornerback room, but one thing I can guarantee you Vikings fans is that you guys will have no problem with Byron Murphy covering the best receivers on the field week in and week out. If I had to give an official prediction, I think Byron Murphy has 4 interceptions this year. I think he has a touchdown on a pick 6 coverage return, and overall, I think he's going to establish himself as one of the highest turnover rate cornerbacks in the entire league. Now, this will come with a bit of a downside. I think he will give up a good amount of yards considering they're significantly relying on him to be the number 1 cornerback. Nonetheless, I think he has a very nice year with Brian Flores in company. Thanks for listening to today's video, guys. Let me know in the comment section below, do you agree with my take on Byron Murphy and Brian Flores? I think this really is a match made in heaven between a number 1 cornerback and a defensive coordinator. If you liked today's video, I really appreciate it. Smack that like and hit subscribe.